Okay, good evening. We are going to start today with Roman numeral for letter M as in Mary, which is Tfilat Kalim, the obligation to immerse um, eating utensils in a mikveh before they are used, if they were made or owned by a Gentile. Okay, when just like it's like our because the kosher food is like our laws and our sacred way of life and encompasses what we eat and the food that we cook as well. Therefore, it's as though the things that we use to eat our food also have to be Jewish. If that's like it's a childish way of thinking about it, but that's I don't know, sort of the best that I've come up with, and sort of as a way of conceiving of this idea. So if you have something which is made by a Jew, which is very, very hard to, I don't know, but it might be, I actually bought like a handmade cheese knife in Israel from a cheese shop, and I was like, oh, I don't have to immerse this in the mikveh, which is very useful because I didn't have time for that. I wanted some cheese. So anyway, so that's fine. But most things you buy are, that's not the case. So they are metal objects and glass objects. Metal objects with a bracha, glass objects without a bracha. Metal objects. The metal objects are brought to the mikveh, okay, before we use them. Um, the laws of this mikveh, the same mikveh that a person uses, but um, mikvahs for people are just much bigger, and they're indoors, and they're now made all fancy with little sort of spa like that. And the mikvahs that we use for our forks and knives are not. So they're the same. You could fit a person in a mikvah for utensils. It's just that they are just not fancy and they're outdoors often or with access from the outside, etc. You could also bring your forks with you to a person mikvah, right? If that was, but because so many mikvahs, once you're investing in the pits and which we can talk about different, like and all of the accoutrement for, it's not that hard to like have a little side section for people to immerse their silverware in. So it's big enough for a person to immerse in, but like not much bigger. And generally there's enough stairs or anything. It doesn't have stairs or anything like that. Just you lift a cover and you put the stuff in. So anything metal goes in. Generally glass we do without a blessing. Glass was like this newfangled technology in the ancient world. We talk about glass. Right. On the one hand, because it melts like metal, but it also shatters like earthenware, and it's made from sand like earthenware, but it melts like metal. So what is it? I didn't really know. It's like doesn't seem to. It's not in the Torah. And what do we do? So glass we generally immerse without a bracha, but okay. And different opinions about china. Generally, I think fine china we don't, but some people do. Of course, then some people do, some people don't. But metal we do for sure. And you would do this before you use it. Any, thing that is not made by a Jew when it enters a Jewish home, it gets. Can you let me Jeremy press talk and the key button, one after the other. So
It's not bringing anymore.
are they there?
The screen's not on.
Hmm. Okay.
You gotta check. Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah. They'll ring again if they. Oof.
Oh,
Oh, you're right.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Like something I would do.
Wow. Okay.
And can you just bring them to a stream?
So if the stream is fed by a spring, then it is a kosher mikveh, and a person or vessels could go in it. If the spring is fed by rainwater, it's not a kosher mikveh. Same with rivers and lakes and things like that. If 51% of the water is from a spring, then it is kosher for mikveh, and if 51% is rainwater, it's not a kosher mikveh. Our mikvahs are rainwater, but they don't. One of the rainwater is collected rainwater is a kosher mikveh if it doesn't flow. Rivers and lakes tend to flow, so they're only kosher if they're fed by a spring. If they're fed by rainwater, they're not kosher mikvahs. So it might work, but depending, you have to just ask a hydrologist to figure that out. Um, the ocean is always kosher mikvah. You could bring it to the ocean. Yeah, ocean is always a kosher. Or anything connected to the ocean, the bay is always a kosher mikvah. So that works as well. Now, if you're if this is separate from things that are from kosher, not kosher. You can food that is or silverware, whatever, let's say we're talking about silverware that has not been to a mikveh yet, it's not kosher. And if let's say uh, you're you're at like you have a kosher restaurant where the utensils are with a non-Jewish owner who owns the forks. Okay, they have no obligation to bring the forks to a mikveh because they're not Jewish. They don't have mitzvot. And as a Jewish customer, you have no obligation to bring the forks to the mikveh because they don't belong to you. And the food is still kosher because the food is kosher. So it's really set. But if a Jew takes possession of the silverware, then before you use it, it should be brought to the mikveh. Um, some interesting loopholes. If you just just based on the demographics of this group, if you're not Jewish, you have no obligation to tovel your bring to the mikveh your utensils. If you subsequently become Jewish after the utensils already belong to you, you don't have to bring them to the mikveh. It's like they become Jewish with you. It's only if you acquire it as a Jew do you need to bring them to the mikveh. That's one. Second, one like sort of leniency. Sometimes like a caterer will have, like you imagine you're a caterer and you have like, oh God, we need to buy another like 300 forks. Oh my gosh, and for a event that's taking place, or let's say 1,000 forks for an event taking place tonight, and we don't have time to. Okay, so if a non-Jew owns it, it's fine. So sometimes like a caterer, if it's a Jewish caterer, will say, okay, we'll just we'll have a non-Jewish associate or one of the waiters or somebody business partner will just take possession of the give it to him and it belongs to him and then doesn't have to be told and they can work something out later. There's also maybe things that are made in a factory. It's unclear. Some people say that if it's made in a factory, maybe it doesn't even matter anyway. So maybe none of this applies to modern things. We generally do it, but that's sort of in the back of my head. Like if something made by a machine, does that count as being made by a person? The person who pushes the button, does that count as actually making it? So we often say that does work. We say that does work. Pushing a button to have something made by a machine counts as those made by hand with by intention. Where do we say that? Something that has to be made with intention for a specific purpose, and somehow machines are sufficient for that. We have two examples. Okay, making matzah by machine, we like okay, which was a huge controversy, and when it was invented, but it seems it works that you're supposed to make matzah for the sake of the mitzvah. If you've ever been to a matzah bakery, they all say they're kneading the dough. They say for the sake of matzahs for the mitzvah. Da, da, da. So somehow you can do that when you're kneading the dough. You can also do it when you push a button, and that somehow works. Similarly, tying tzitzit has to be done for the mitzvah, and there are machines that tie tzitzit, I believe. So that somehow is considered good enough. Okay, so in any event, so maybe for any event, so the shul has a mikveh for these utensils. It's on the ground. It's behind the stairs. You can access it from outside. I would take you there now, but we don't. It's adjacent to the people mikveh, and so we stay away at nighttime to preserve privacy for the women who are using the mikveh, who might be using the mikveh tonight. And so we stay away from the mikveh at night. It's open all day during the day, during daylight. Once the daylight ends, stay away from it, and the premises of the mikveh are reserved for women who are using the mikveh. Questions on, and some of the same rules actually as immersing people in the mikveh apply. Can't have any barriers, no chatzitzot between the thing being immersed and the water. So, and it all has to be immersed at the same time. Unlike koshering, where you can kosher it one half and then kosher the other half because you're just getting whatever's absorbed in the fork, like expunged out into the water. When it comes to immersion, it has to entirely be surrounded by the mikveh waters, at least for a moment. So you hold it under, you have to like release your hand briefly and hopefully it doesn't fall to the bottom. A lot of mikveh, these utensil mikvahs, keli mikvahs, you have like plates and forks, strewn on the bottom that no one will ever be able to retrieve because people drop it. But that you have to it has to be completely surrounded for a moment, and you can't have a barrier, right? So if there's like a label, you have to remove the labels, which is often like a big pain in the neck because you get a whole set of new glasses or you get a whole set of new forks, and every fork comes with a sticker on it. So you have to like remove all the stickers before you immerse it, which is often a big pain.
Why can't people get stuff off the bottom of the mikveh?
Because you can't reach to the bottom, and you drop your fork. How are you gonna get in? You're not gonna go in. You're not gonna, right? So we have these little, gripper things, and some, some mikvahs you put like a little glass sheet in the middle of the mikvah so that if things fall, it won't fall from the bottom. Shopping baskets, so you can put your things in, you immerse it, so it's surrounded by the water, but it won't fall. So yeah, okay. Questions or comments on? Okay, so can't take a field trip now, but yeah. You gotta have a what?
Time immersing chopsticks.
Chopsticks,
If
why?
they slip through.
Yeah,
Uh,
Is that?
and there's so
mm,
many of them.
mm, okay, I hear that. I hear that. Okay, there you are. Okay. So beware, child. Just be careful. Yeah. And anything I was gonna say about that? You can do multiple things, one bracha for multi. You have a bunch of things to bring. You say one bracha, and you can have in mind all the, like putting up a mezuzah on your door. One bracha, you have in mind all the doors you have to put mezuzahs on. So one bracha for all the things you have to bring to the keli mikveh. Okay. That is, I think, all we're going to say about that. Oh, yeah.
Question.
Yeah,
So
please.
If a pan thrifted, if it was thrifted, for example, and used,
Hmm.
can that be mikvahd or does it have to be destroyed? Or can you not?
You told me you're like what? Like I mean, somebody gave you a pan,
Right.
a used
but
pan.
it's
So
been
what,
used.
so what are the issues there? Like a couple of. So what are the issues there?
It's uh it's not kosher.
Right. So what do you have to do? So you have to kosher it, right?
Right.
So like depending on the item, we learned that we did that already. So how do we kosher things that have been used with things are koshered by the method which we did this a week or two ago. Things are koshered by the method by which they were contaminated in the first place. So things that are used with boiling, they're kosher with boiling water. Things that are used with dry heat, they have to be koshered in dry heat. So a skewer or a grill, um, or a roasting pan, the only way to kosher it is with a blowtorch, or you get it like, or you put it in a self-cleaning oven, okay? Something which is a pot, which you use with water, then you could kosher it by immersing it in boiling water. Frying pan is a little ambiguous. Like you have oil or liquid or some liquid medium. So generally you can kosher a frying pan by immersing it in boiling water. So that's the kosher issue. So you get a secondhand pot that you can kosher it. So just kosher it. Once you kosher it, or before you also have to bring it to the mikveh, right? If it was a non-Jew who owned it, it has to be has to be immersed in the mikveh before it should be used. So that's the second stage.
So, but does the order matter?
The order does not matter. Generally, we kosher first, but I don't think it actually matters, as far as I can tell.
Handle included?
The handle has to be immersed in the mikveh. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
And koshering, if it's metal and it's all connected, you should kosher everything because in theory the taste could be absorbed throughout if it's all one piece of metal, then
it's like plastic, like has the grip.
I don't think that has to be immersed in boiling water because that has not come in contact with the food. And they're two.
And then when you kosher it, does the cleat or the pot you're putting it in have to consume the whole pot that you're
You can kosher in halves, right? As long as
In halves.
every section that comes in contact with food has to be koshered, does not have to be all at once.
does it have to overflow off the top of the pan?
If the pot that you're koshering if you're immersing in it, there's no need to overflow. If you're koshering a pot
Yeah.
by filling that very pot with boiling water, then the only way to get the outside is to overflow it by putting a rock in or putting something else inside that a little bit. But if you're koshering in that pot, there's no need to overflow. If you have a fork, then you're koshering. So you have a big pot of boiling water, you just put the fork in, right? That's easy peasy.
Ceramic.
Ceramic generally cannot be kosher. Ceramic cannot be kosher. Yeah.
What if you have use ceramic and then you convert?
If it's kosher, then it's fine.
Okay.
If it's not kosher, you can't kosher it. Fine china can be koshered after 12 months if would be a financial loss to replace it. Okay, so that's subjective depending on who you are and your stage in life. So if it's like your grandmother's whatever, then okay, or it's a set that yeah, it would be a financial burden to replace the set. Then wait, if it's unused for 12 months, it can be kosher in boiling water. You have to be careful; it might shatter in boiling water. If it's fine china, you might I would recommend you temper it, put it in warm water, and then hotter water, and then in your boiling water. It's been 12 months, financial loss, then that's fine. Anything else? Okay. All right, let's continue. N. Okay, this is fun. Okay. What is a reliable hechsher? So this is a relatively new development that there would be agencies that supervise kosher food. I think it's like a modern development. And once they're agency, and there's a whole history, there are actually some really good books that have been written about the history of kashrut certifying agencies. It's connected to the rise of industrial food and capitalism and whatever, and all sorts of regulations. It's a very interesting story from economics perspective, from a anthropology perspective, right? You have private agencies that without any government authority that are coordinating with each other and with the consumer and with the companies in this very interesting symbiotic way. Um, and at this point, the majority of products sold in American supermarkets have kosher supervision, which is really remarkable. Uh, what they are certifying, right? So like and the OU is the biggest. I think they're incredibly sophisticated in their kashrut knowledge and also their knowledge of industrial food production. If they're supervising a product, they have inspectors who have gone to the factory, who have determined every ingredient that is used. They've traced back that ingredient in the factory where that ingredient is made, and that factory is supervised. And there are contracts that govern what comes in and what comes out. They're not allowed to change or deviate from ingredients without checking with them. They've enforced their trademark very vigorously. And the good, reliable kosher agencies are sort of basically similar, and they tend to trust one another because they need to. Because if I'm making a cookie, and my flour, my butter, all of my ingredients come from a dozen other factories, which could be supervised by 6 other agencies. So the OU has to know which other agencies they're willing to rely on. And so there are a group of agencies that are in a sort of in cooperation with each other. They're in competitive competition with each other, but also cooperating with each other because they're all enforcing standards and processes that are sufficiently similar that they're willing to rely on each other's supervision for products that they make that take ingredients from one or the other. So what is so there are like some major agencies that are on the scale of like a multinational corporation insofar as the hundreds or thousands of products they supervise. The OU is a giant. Another really big one is the Circle K, which was originally a Chabad operation, but they provide supervision to like non-Chabad standards, and pretty massive. The Star K comes from Baltimore, Rav Chaim in their Israel community in Baltimore. That's really big. They have a division of products that they themselves won't eat, but they feel is good enough for the general consumer. The stam challah of products, right, which we haven't talked about, which we should talk about. But that's actually not on on the curriculum. I'll mention that at some point. Remind me to talk about milk before we finish, okay? Anyway, okay. So the OU, the OK, Star K, Chaf K is really big also. They're pretty big. I don't know, I think the biggest. You also have local kashrut organizations that are based in cities. So the rabbis of the DC area will supervise restaurants in our area and will also supervise factories in our area. And some of them you rarely see because they really just do the restaurants in the city. You go to Cleveland, you'll see whatever, like 10 kosher restaurants in Cleveland, all supervised by the Orthodox rabbis of Cleveland and their little rabbinic association. Maybe there's like a factory that they'll, in Cleveland that they'll supervise as well. And so you might see it in your supermarket, but you're much less likely to. Like the big ones, are the ones that you'll see on consumer products. Yes. Right. Right.
About Triangle K. And how do you know that the kashrut supervisor in a different city is one that you?
Yeah. Great. Good question. So the two questions I'll sort of approach them. So for now, I'm just saying, everything goes well. Assuming everyone has great intentions and everything's good. One possibility is you don't trust kashrut in any other city until you find out about them, and you would want to look into it. And there are some of the agencies and some of the, which will tell you, like, so in Chicago, the CRC, Chicago Rabbinical Council, has a kashrut division. They do restaurants and some like, food, local businesses in Chicago. They also do factories in the Midwest, not just in the Midwest, but mostly in the Midwest. And they also, because they're a community-facing organization, they also have a list of national and international kashrut agencies that they endorse. So that's like helpful. There's like Rabbi Eidlitz out of California who has a kashrut magazine, a website, and he has a list of kosher agencies internationally that he endorses. Our shul has a list as well. It's on our website. It's on the refrigerator. It's based on those with a few additional ones as well. And my general approach is that the Orthodox congregational rabbis of the community can be presumed to be reliable for supervising restaurants and businesses and factories in their community. And I don't think there's further investigation. Like they have a cheskak. You can assume without just knowing that they're an Orthodox congregational rabbi serving a community, like the restaurant in that community is kosher. I think that's a fair assumption to make, and you don't need to do any additional investigation. The challenge is when you have agencies supervising businesses that are not in their local community, and you have a number of different types of non-reliable hechshers that could be. So I'm not gonna, well, since we're being recorded, I'm not gonna tell you which agencies, which signals you may have seen correspond to these different types of non-reliable, but I'll just say there's just several different non-reliable. Maybe after the recording, I'll help you to, okay. One way it could be not reliable is it's reliable and sincere, like sincere, God-fearing, learned Orthodox rabbis are in charge of the standards. But they are applying standards that are different from what the largest kosher organizations are using. And so that would be a reason not to reuse it because, I don't know, if you're eating OU products, you're eating OU Cup K, OU Star K products, you are, for processed foods, you are basically you're observing kashrut on level 9, and these other agencies, it's level 6 because they're availing themselves of various leniencies that the other agencies are not availing themselves to, and therefore they're not considered reliable by those agencies, and generally the community as well does not consider them reliable. Okay, so there's one very prominent agency that falls into that category. Second category is reliable, God-fearing Orthodox rabbis are in charge of the agency, but they don't have the sophistication or the operation from a logistical standpoint to actually provide the supervision that you would want. That could be because they're in a different city and they just don't make it that often. They don't have great, there are examples of restaurants in major cities where the rabbi who gives the restaurant a kashrut, vouches for the restaurant, lives in a different community and doesn't visit very often, and they know he's never going to visit on child. It's just not, the degree of supervision is minimal. And then the final category is when they're just, I think, maybe some combination of low standards and minimal inspection, and those exist as well. And there's a prominent kosher agency that falls into this category as well. I think there's just, from what I've heard about restaurants and factories, there's like minimal supervision, and the standards they apply are really quite, again, they might be sincere, but they're not the standards the community operates. And I would, and I've said before, I would feel better eating something without a hechsher than with these guys because I just feel like it's a fraudulent. It makes me very angry. So, yes.
So do these problems with unreliable koshering agencies, are they typically short-lived and market correcting? Because why would a restaurant or a food producer want to use someone that's unreliable, that the core audience who would care about the kosher certification wouldn't believe as reliable? Like, are there examples of things that just go on for forever, or are these short-term things that market correct?
Yeah, it's a great question. So generally, it's really interesting. I mean, there's a book. There's an anthropologist, economist who did a study because it's really interesting. I mean, I don't want to get on too much of a tangent. In Israel, this is a government bureaucracy, and so in Israel, the government, every city, every municipality, every region has a government-appointed, rabbinical establishment whose job is to certify restaurants and factories as being kosher, but each one has the autonomy to set its own standards, which are sometimes high and sometimes fairly low. And so people who really care about kashrut might not rely. So they have a government provided monopoly and a government mandate to certify everything as kosher, but they have no, like the standards can be quite low because there's no competition. And then there are private agencies that will also supervise some of those things, but after, so any product in Israel will have the state rabbinate certification plus a private hechsher as well for certain products as well. So that's like one model. In America, it's entirely privatized, and you can't government. It's just there are all sorts of concepts. The government's involvement is sort of minimal. In New York State, for a while, you had a state of New York kashrut inspector, and if you claimed that something was kosher and he said it wasn't, he could like go after you as a kind of on a basis of consumer fraud. The problem was it was sort of predictable. It was sort of it really ran into First Amendment Establishment Clause problems of like who's to say why does the state of New York have the right to tell me what is and what isn't kosher? So even though you might say, oh, you're defrauding the consumers by claiming you're kosher, by based on your, but like yeah, there was a conservative rabbi in Long Island who was certifying a butcher, and the New York State kashrut supervisor was fining them, saying you can't do that, and that got the whole system broke down. New Jersey had a difference. New Jersey has a also consumer protection law with kashrut, which is based on transparency. So if you claim your business is kosher, like a restaurant or whatever it is, you then have to say the agency that supervises it, and then you have to declare what definition you're using. And there's sort of a standardized checklist of the degree of supervision you are providing and the name of the agency, and then you can call it kosher. So that, so far, as far as I can tell, I haven't been in New Jersey in a while, but I believe that has mustered, passed constitutional weight. And that, okay. All that being said, no, and there are still restaurants with very so why does the market correction not jump in? I would say let's say you have you're a potato chip company and you get, and you get one of these not very reliable agencies. So maybe they're charging you five, 10, $20,000. I don't know. But if you're like you're Frito-Lay, and you're like you have like one line of potato chips or whatever, or multiple lines of potato chips, or your, Tostitos, whatever, I don't know, whatever product it might be, right? So like Tostitos for like, is like one brand of a company that owns like 500 brands. It's a large multinational, right? So whatever they're charging, if it's five, 10, $50,000 to supervise, it's like it's a fraction of a penny on every bag of potato chips that they sell, and the kosher consumer is a negligible share of the market. So they might not notice any market correction, even if like Orthodox Jews who are sensitive to these things care. And the restaurants that have these bad hechshers, you see a lot of in New York, in particular, is one not in our area as well. Most of their clients are not Jews, right? So that's why. So let's say it's a vegetarian restaurant and it's mostly non-Jewish clientele, and there's a rabbi in Brooklyn who's willing to say it's kosher, and he comes down and visits and says it's kosher, and then he goes away. So or like, you know what I mean? So maybe there's some Jews who go because it's kosher. The restaurant never notices, oh my, I expecting these like streams of Orthodox Jews coming in. They never appear. I don't know, but like that wasn't his business model. So he might never notice. And so that's how you don't have this market correction. But among people who care, there is a market correction, and the agencies work together with with the businesses they supervise in a very interesting kind of symbiotic way. So that was okay. So you don't just see a symbol and assume it's, and then of course also there are symbols on food that has nothing to do with kashrut, like the circle R means that it's a registered trademark, does not mean that it's kosher. Okay. And things could be vegan or it could be gluten-free, does not mean it's kosher. Okay. So, okay. Um, all right. All right.
Then you
Two
want to
things.
talk about milk.
Yes, thank you. Milk. So milk and wine, which I think are not on my curriculum. I should add them. Okay. Milk. Classically, in the times of the Talmud and through, okay, milk had to be milked by a Jew or under eyesight of a Jew, under supervision of a Jew. And milk that was milked without a Jew's supervision was presumed to be non-kosher because you're worried that the Gentile farmer, dairyman, was mixing in the milk of a non-kosher animal. Um, there are some precedent for this, but Moshe Feinstein, very important American legal scholar, rabbi, in the 1950s, says that in the United States you don't have to be concerned for this because the milk is subject to FDA supervision, and that makes it akin to being milked under Jewish supervision because the government is regulating it. No one's going to mix their, you know, I mean, camel milk is not sold in large quantities, neither is horse milk. Um, and the government supervising. There's no financial incentive to do it, and no one would break the law because and bring upon themselves, the wrath of a government agency and the loss of their, customer base. And so, in the United States and I think similar countries with like, robust regulation of food, milk does not have to be like kosher in this way. Uh, but many people are strict nonetheless, and you can find in the kosher supermarkets milk that is called Chalav Yisrael, milk that has been milked with Jewish supervision, and some people are strict about that. Among them, the Star K agency, but they sell dairy products that are not with Chalav Yisrael milk. They just have a slightly different texture for those products. That's why how it came up. Chabad generally is very strict about Chalav Yisrael, but they also will supervise like the Circle K, even though it's a Chabad operation, they will certify products they themselves won't eat uh, based on this position. So Oaks like Circle OKD is not necessarily Chalav Yisrael. Chabad Hasidim won't consume those products, but they're willing to sell it. Okay. No. Eggs, no. You just have to make sure they're from a kosher bird. So, which is, there are very few non-kosher. I'm not sure there are any non-kosher birds whose eggs are sold for food in the United States with any. I think you can get ostrich eggs maybe. Yeah, but those look really different. That's what I meant. Yeah, yeah. That's yeah. Yeah. So I don't think that's a concern per se. Yeah. Yeah.
Chabad will sell OK, the OK mark, the milk that's not Chalav Yisrael. What is marked for Chalav Yisrael?
I think it'll say Chalav Yisrael on it.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a good question. And the Star K has like a different, I forget. It's like a D with a star in it, and that's their non-Chalav Yisrael dairy hechsher, because their community wants to try to maintain that stringency. Okay.
but Chalav Yisrael, though, I mean, that's not just Chabad. I mean, I mean,
Yeah, a lot of people are strict about Chalav Yisrael. Yeah.
yeah, but in other words, can anyone just put Chalav Yisrael and you don't know who did it?
Well, the agency, you would also look for an agency. I mean, there'd be an
Oh.
agency that would say, whatever kasher agency is supervising the milk would also be endorsing.
Chabad, Chalav Yisrael.
Yeah, whatever it might be. There's actually another Chabad hechsher. There's a Chabad, the Vad of Crown Heights has a different hechsher. Circle K is run by Chabad, it was like founded by Chabad Hasidim, but it really was done to be like a major agency. There's also the Crown Heights K, whatever it was. It's like I can show it to you later if you want. There's a Crown Heights Vad, which is like their own, internal things. We're like more like meat and cheeses and things like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Will the charmery be kosher?
The charmery is he wants to make a kosher. I'd like to make a kosher. The issues with the charmery are that he has some flavors that are with non-kosher ingredients. So either he's going to stop making them, or we're going to figure out a way to. Oh no, much worse than that. No, like or he's going to figure out a way to just keep them on dedicated lines. I visited the factory. I visited the dairy where the cream is made, and the issue is, some of the flavors have non-kosher ingredients. But yeah.
How come there's so little kosher restaurants in DC?
Why there's so little kosher restaurants in DC? DC does not have many Jews, and most of the Jews who live in DC eat in non-kosher restaurants. In order to have and the restaurant.
I didn't know you were
If you need large numbers of Orthodox Jews who only eat in kosher restaurants, and you need large numbers of Orthodox Jews with discretionary money who are eating meals in restaurants. Another thing that helps is so like Chicago has great kosher restaurants because you have a lot of these Orthodox Jews who own nursing homes, and they do these they go out to fancy restaurants. So that sustains Chicago kosher restaurants. The other thing that helps is if you have either lots of singles who are dating, and that's fuels restaurant. But really, what sustains the New York kosher restaurant industry is people in law and finance and consulting who stay at work until 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. every night, and they expense dinners. I don't think attorneys in DC stay at work until 10, 11 at night.
Do
Really? Oh,
expense dinners.
they don't expense dinners.
Did expense some dinners.
Yeah. Oh.
Expense dinners.
My sense, like the law firms in New York, they're like, you're expensing dinner, these big firms, big law in New York, you're expensing lunch and dinner every day. So you have like some Orthodox Jews, enough Orthodox Jews working for these firms, they're expensing their lunch and dinners. They're taking clients out to meals. You need like fancy, so that sustains like yeah, yeah.
So they have to be closed on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, never.
Or it's like, so that's like a huge piece of business for most restaurants.
So right, that's a challenge for kosher restaurants, but in general, but yet in New York and Chicago, they're like Chicago is a I mean Chicago's a big Orthodox community than it's a bigger Jewish community than DC, but it's has much better restaurants, and New York has many more. So it is possible to
I feel like it's a Imuna thing where you're gonna have faith that Hashem is gonna.
gonna what
your
send you
money.
customers.
So for, not all your income is gonna come in those days. It's a battle of faith that you're gonna get your money in the weekdays. And,
Yeah, I mean, if your clientele are Jews, then that's fine. But if you're trying to, those are otherwise those are big restaurant days. Also, at least in restaurant and when they go out to restaurants, Jews don't consume as much alcohol. And for the restaurants make a lot of their profit margin on drinks is very high. So your profit on many restaurants, their profit is from the bar, and Jews when they go out to eat in restaurants don't tend to order alcohol. So that also makes it's just a hard industry it's very hard to make money in owning a restaurant. Even non-kosher restaurants struggle. Like it's not a very stable business.
There used to be a kosher restaurant called Dax, and a colleague told me that it was founded by someone who didn't have any kosher restaurants he could take clients to lunch, so he decided to start the restaurant.
But then what happened?
Nice.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. See, yeah. It's not great. Not great.
wine since we started.
Oh, so I work for the largest law firm in India. There are people ordering food at the night there. Not sure how many of them are Jews. Okay, good. All right. So fine. So thank you. All right, you go. Can we what?
What's the comment?
Wine. Okay. Wine. So just so we have that. In fact, the law firms in DC they do expense dinners, and I was maligning the. I thought everyone here they go home early. They don't. It's not like yeah. Okay, but you don't have the consulting firms like you do in New York. You don't have the finance firms. You have like hundreds and hundreds. You have maybe like there could be 500 or 1,000 Orthodox Jews in their 20s in Manhattan who are staying at work until 10, 11 p.m. every night, and they're expensing their lunches and dinners, and like that's like I don't that's yeah. So that's a yeah. Okay, we'll do wine and then we'll wrap up. Okay, and I'll say one other comment. I'm sorry, is that the book that I mentioned, Rabbi Piniko and a Practical Guide to Laws of Kashrut, that's on the sheet. That book was out of print for the last many years. It has now been reissued in a new edition. So it's a great book about kashrut. So I recommend it, assuming they haven't changed it since I last saw it. So that's part one. Second, wine, which is not on here. Let's talk about wine. Wine, based again on the Talmud. Well, how do I say this? In the time of the Torah, biblical times, there was and into Talmudic times, there was a concern that Gentiles who were Greco-Roman pagans would pour wine libations to their idols before consuming it. And so any wine that had been handled by a Gentile was presumed to be non-kosher because of an assumption that he or she had poured a libation to their idol before drinking it. And so only wine that Jews can only drink wine that is exclusively handled by Gentiles. In the Middle Ages, when Jews found themselves living among Christians and Muslims who didn't do this, nonetheless, the prohibition endures, and in part based on just sort of the momentum of tradition, and also out of an understanding that wine is a symbolic beverage that cements relationships in an intimate way, and that the kind of social connection that emerges from drinking wine together can lead to intermarriage, and so the prohibition remains, although its strictness lowers. When precisely in the grape to wine stage, it has to entirely be handled by Jews. It was subject to tremendous debate in the Middle Ages. This was a tremendously economically significant fraught question because Jewish communities, especially in France, in various times in the Middle Ages, were very small. There weren't enough Jews to make their own wine. Jews had to have wine for Kiddush and ritual purposes. Wine was a major product of international trade in the Middle Ages because, among other reasons, water was not safe to drink for many centuries. And so this concern, much halakha literature, Professor Chaim Soloveitchik has written several books on this topic from the historical perspective. Um, Kosher wine is exclusively handled by Jews from, I think, when the grapes are squeezed until they sealed in the bottle. Only Jews are involved in touching, producing. However, in Talmudic times, it was understood that if the wine had been cooked, then it was no longer suitable for libation. That's sort of a rule for our libations in our temple. So it was presumed that the pagans also had that similar rule. And so once wine has been cooked, there's no worry that the Gentile has used it for libation, and so they can touch and handle it and without concern. Kosher wine today will say on the label, mivushal or eno mivushal. Mivushal means it's been cooked, which in modern parlance really means it's like a flash pasteurization. And so a Gentile can pour from that bottle without impacting the kashrut of the wine. Wine that says eno mivushal, okay. The shul's kashrut policies call for only mivushal wine to be served at any meal that you're sharing with other people, because we have all sorts of people from diverse religious backgrounds, all sorts of family, friends, etc., gracing our tables on Shabbat and holidays and weekdays, whenever. And so only mivushal wine should be served, unless you are eating a meal, an intimate group of friends and family, and you know the Jewish status of absolutely everyone who's going to be at the table. And that's that. Questions, comments, and then we'll wrap up. Okay.
That's why I asked you.
Yes, you asked when you're at our house. That's right. So yeah. So, but I'm one step ahead of you. Okay. So we the non-Mivushal wines, people say they'll taste a little bit better. There's certainly the fancier wines. So it was just my family Friday night. We opened up a bottle of non-Mivushal wine, which we did not finish. It was on our counter. And when we had guests at lunch, I went down to the basement and opened up a bottle of Mivushal wine so that everyone can sit around the table. It's just a thing to do to make your guests feel comfortable, etc. Like that. It's good. It's good. Sometimes people give us wine and bring us wine that is not Mivushal. And I think Vera, actually, you've brought us wine that is not Mivushal as a gift. And I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you do, because that is wine that I don't serve at the meal and I save away for a special occasion. So that's great. It's like I'm so grateful for that, because it's like particularly good, and we save it for when it's just family. Um, um, Another way, just while we're talking, another way to be like a good host and responsible host is to always have grape juice as an option. There's some people it's not safe, they're in recovery, or they might be pregnant, or they might have some other medical condition that they don't want to disclose to you, and just to have grape juice on the table as well for your guests to have a non-alcoholic option for Kiddush, and is I think it's an easy thing to do. Like buy some grape juice, keep it in your fridge, and put it on the table when you have guests over for Shabbat or Yom Tov meals. All right, I'm gonna turn off the camera, the recording. Thank you so much. And we're meeting again next week, right? I believe. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, take care. All right.